Welcome to the 51st episode of the First Person Podcast and the annual Best Game episode of 2021. This year, we want to take this opportunity to introduce the current FPS team, so you will hear some new and old voices. They're going to tell you about their favorite games of this past year and maybe a bit more in the realm of critique. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. Who are you people and why are you here?
Hi, my name is Aldiana and I am the book reviews and interviews editor at FPS. I just joined the team this year. Glad to be here. Very excited. I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Waterloo. My research isn't really about video games. It's about short stories and the intersections of rhetoric and literature and how we can use narratology specifically to examine the form and structure of short stories to kind of figure out what they're saying in the way that they're written, as opposed to like themes or general things that people usually study in literature with respect to short stories. So yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm Alex. I'm the section editor for commentaries, and I'm on like all these podcasts, so I'm not going to take up any more time.
Hi, my name's Andrew Bailey. I'm relatively new at FPS. I just started as section head of essays, I guess in the past couple months. Previously, I did a little bit of work as a copy editor for First Person Scholar, and also had a couple articles published over the years as well. What else can I say? I also work as an editor for Press Start Journal, and I'm currently working as a sessional instructor in game studies at OCAD. And my research, I'm kind of like in an in-between research stage between what my dissertation was on and then what I'm hoping to focus on in postdoctoral studies. But principally, it's about video games and art and visual artists that use game engines, specifically Canadian visual artists who use game engines, at least currently. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview.
And my name is Giuseppe Femia. I am the host and podcast producer here at FPS. And you already know me, so Sabrina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sabrina Scandura. I am one of the EICs of FPS this year. Y'all pretty much know me because I've been on most of these podcasts. Happy to be here.
All right, and with that, we should just get into it. From what we've put forward every single year, the best games of 2021 don't necessarily have to be the games that were released in 2021, but just the games that we found have been our best companions through the ghoulish nightmare of what has been the pandemic. So, anyways, Aldiana, we're going to start with you. What is your best game of 2021?
My best game of 2021 would have to be Uno. It's a familiar favorite that I have played for many, many years and never fails to entertain. Lately, I've been really into playing Uno with just two people and then kind of doing speed rounds and where we time each other so that you go as fast as you can without thinking a lot about strategy. And it's a very entertaining way to play if you guys haven't played that way before.
Who are you playing Uno with?
My partner. But I'm better, so...
So you've been kind of modding the game in order to keep it fresh.
Yeah, my whole strategy was timing it since he's really good with the strategy side of things. So I find that if we time ourselves, I have an upper hand in that way when he can't think too much about what he's going to do next.
That is a very underhanded technique, and I 100% respect it.
Thank you.
So my game of the year has been Depression. Not the video game, the state of being, which is a sort of joking way to go into sort of my feelings as someone who invests a lot of thought and emotional energy into video games, to say this was kind of a bleak year for me. I mean, for everyone generally, and accordingly, it was like a weird gaming year for me. It feels like my relationship to games has changed a lot in the context of the pandemic, in that and I think I alluded to this last year, but it's intensified. I'm really turning to games as like an analgesic or an anesthetic in a lot of ways I wasn't before. I'm not engaging, and I feel bad about this. I'm really not engaging much with like indie games lately. I'm really going for a lot of like big tent releases, partially because they're just the thing of the moment, and it feels like a social experience to play those, or it feels like a way of engaging with the wider world. And a lot of my gaming is more oriented towards just sort of like stimulation and pleasure, as opposed to sort of aesthetic there's more aesthetic or intellectual ways of engaging with it, which is what I would do in the past more. So that's how I'm sort of leading into my Game of the Year considerations. I guess in terms of naming games, one of the games that sort of broke me out of my funk this year was Psychonauts 2. And ironically, not because it's a good game, especially. I just have. I mean, I think it's good, but I was always going to think that because I loved the first Psychonauts when I played it when I was like 13 or 14 and really like invested in it and really loved like the characters and the world and I mean, it's an amazing thing playing the first Psychonauts. I'm sure now, but even then, because it's just so visibly a busted game. Like there are just all these rough edges and like visible bugs and like things that if you dig into the release of that game, it was literally rushed out the door. I think like right at the end, a month was just chopped off of their release schedule, and they're like, okay, we're releasing it like next week. And so it's always been a game with rough edges, and in many ways, the second is more polished, but still just has that sort of roughness. But with that comes the sense of it being this thing that the people who made really loved. And so it was nice sort of being able to return to that world from a time well before the pandemic, to find it was still there and still had like a similar kind of joy and energy to it that it had before I started, before I hit my current pattern of gaming, which is just mainlining Souls games, because it turns out that once you accept that you're going to lose a boss fight, you can just vibe to it for about 6 hours until suddenly you've won. And so that's been my 2 games of the year are Psychonauts 2 and the Souls-like genre.
That's very funny. I'm really, I think we'll be talking about it later, but I'm also really been thinking a lot about the Souls-like series and especially Elden Ring. I got Demon Souls as a Christmas present this year, and I've yet to dig into it. But I don't know, big fan of Souls games. I think as far as my own games of the year, I'm definitely someone who likes to keep a pretty like consistent list and edit it throughout the year as far as what I'm playing. And I always try to like, I don't know, gamify the lists that I'm making. So I wasn't even really sure how I would put this on because it's an early access title. But I had a lot of fun with Valheim this year. The early access survival Viking game. It kind of came out, I believe, towards the beginning of 2021, sometime in the early spring. And I think it probably hit me a lot harder, or like it impacted me a lot because I haven't really played a lot of similar survival games before. Like I haven't really played a lot of Minecraft. I dabbled a bit in Ark, but this was one of the first games that I really was part of a group of people who rented a server and like had a consistent server going on, and like you could play with, and there was like a little bit of a community of friends that we had going. And I don't know, it's one of the first games that I've played in a really long time that I caught myself like wanting to play before work. Like I'd like wake up a little bit early to like kind of sneak in and like help the friend group do some extra like get some extra lumber or mine some extra resources or try to build something that would be a pleasant surprise to the rest of my friends. And so I don't know, it worked in tandem, unsurprisingly, with the pandemic, of being kind of like the quarantines and the lockdowns, is just being able to have this space with a group of friends that you can consistently be either like ambiently or like kind of like asynchronously social if you weren't always on the server at the same time. But yeah, so I don't know, that one for me stuck out. I don't know if it's the game I played the most this year, but I while I was playing it, I played it quite intensely, and I was having a really, I don't know, really positive time at a time where it was where things were tough.
Nice. I guess I'll go with mine now. So, my roommate came to me at some point at the beginning of 2020. He goes, "Joey, we're gonna play Halo together. I have the Master Chief Collection. You're gonna help me get all the multiplayer collectibles." And I went, "All right." So we did that, and I played through Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, Reach, and ODST, and then Halo 4 with him. And it's this weird thing being on a cruise ship with a nerd where he has read all the books and he has gone through all the different lore for all the different games, and he can explain every single thing that was part of the game, but I never fully understood. But when he was like talking about it, there's a very rich lore behind the entire Halo franchise, and the amount of effort that they put in since the first and second game to just expand on all of this entire universe of information has just been phenomenal. Like, for example, did you know that the Flood and Halo were initially a disease that got contracted by the pets of humans? He had to explain that to me, and when he explained that to me, I'm like, huh. But then, like, there's new stuff that they put in for the Master Chief Collection for Halo 1 and 2, where you can go to, like, these panels and get video flashbacks of, like, the heretic leader talking to one of the oracles about, like, what it means to be the Arbiter, and Captain Keyes, like, fighting mentally off the Flood, trying to infect his mind, and it is so much more of an immersive experience than the initial game probably could have ever been. And the fact that they were going to get canceled after Halo 2 is just mind-boggling, because they left it on a cliffhanger because they couldn't finish the game in time for Halo 2. And that's partially the reason that they got so much money to finish the series, and then they didn't end up finishing the series, and it's still going. And they just released Halo Infinite, which, once he's finished, we're going to play multiplayer. So I have that to look forward to in 2022. But yeah, the entire Halo franchise has been my game of the year.
I love that. Little, like, preteen Sabrina loves that, and also 2020 Sabrina loves that. But 2021 Sabrina did not play Halo, and I'm jealous, and I wish I did. My game of the year, there was a few for me that I kept going back to. Ori and the Blind Forest was, even though that came out in 2014, 2015, something like that, that game broke me in the best way, emotionally. And I have the Will of the Wisp, which I never got a chance to get into, but that came out more recently in 2020, so that's probably going to be a 2022 game for sure. And Foundation. I played an insane amount of Foundation, which is, it's kind of like this, what's this category? Basically, it's like a simulation game where you're building a medieval society. And I love it, but it is ridiculously difficult, or maybe I'm just ridiculously bad, which actually that checks out if you've ever seen me play Civ 6. But there's a lot of stuff you have to pay attention to when you're growing the city, which was really fun, but also like hell, until I discovered mods for the game. And then I decided to play God a little too much, and I then made the game very boring for myself because I turned on all the mods all at the same time, which then took all the challenge out of it, which I thought would be more fun for me because I'm not necessarily good at games, so too much of a challenge. There's a reason why I can't play the Souls-like games. But yeah, no, there's apparently a sweet spot that I'm starting to discover of just enough of a challenge, but not too much. So I have to play around with those mods still. And then the most recent one would have been Horizon Zero Dawn, which I'm happy to have gone back to in anticipation for the sequel coming out in February. I'm very excited. So those would be my top three would be those ones.
Very nice. And as a more general conversation piece, we wanted to open up the floor just to anyone right now. What the most expected, is that the right word?
Anticipated?
Anticipated, that's the right word for it. The most anticipated game of 2022 for this year to come.
Oh my god, I have two. First of all, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, the sequel, and Elden Ring.
Elden Ring!
I am so stoked! I'm so excited. And which is ridiculous considering how I'm not very good at those kinds of games, but I don't care. I'm very excited. And if I can't play it because I keep dying too much, then I'm excited to watch people who are good at the gameplay.
If anyone ever wants a conversation that will just make them hate me because they will be exhausted afterwards, just ask me why I think that Souls games don't have to be hard, and that the Co-op is good, and you should use it, and you should read strategy guides. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, I don't know. I would agree. I feel like they really have a reputation for being so difficult, but I think I've played every single Dark Souls game and Bloodborne, and I just co-op my way through most of like it's fun. It's almost like playing like a it's not like an MMO or something, but you can really treat it like a cooperative online social experience, depending on if you have people you know playing it or even just random strangers. Like people are most of the time pretty. I guess if you get invaded, it's not so helpful, but there's a lot of like helpful jolly cooperation, as I think it's called in the community a bunch. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Elden Ring a bunch. That's kind of why I'm holding off on starting Dark Souls or Demon Souls, that present that I got. I'm just gonna give my soul's energy to Elden Ring.
One thing, Andrew, I will say about Demon Souls, and maybe a reason to play it before Elden Ring comes out, is, although you're running out of time, the community on that, first of all, it's easier than the other ones that I've played. But second, the community on Demon Souls is incredibly active. Like, you can get summoned in seconds, and the matchmaking is like lightning fast. So in some ways, I think it's a great introduction to the series for people who like are averse to the idea that it's difficult, or who are like sort of put off by the difficulty, because never has it been easier, as far as I know, in a Souls game to call in some random dude with a huge sword to help you kill a boss.
Well, maybe that's where I need to start, because this year I had to have our very lovely Giuseppe Femia stream playing Dark Souls so that I could experience it secondhand, because I couldn't do it myself. I haven't picked up Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3 since, oh my gosh, I don't even remember when. I think I tried once in undergrad and promptly threw the controller and gave up. So I have a love-hate with it, because I love reading about the lore and watching videos on it. Maybe I just haven't found somebody to play co-op with. Maybe that's my issue. I gotta play co-op with you guys.
Yeah, we should try and coordinate. Get a first person scholar souls outing going.
I love that idea. We're gonna do that, because that's probably the only way I'm gonna be able to play these games.
My favorite way of thinking about the games is, in the Souls-like games, you are a very small person. So, and you're fighting very big things. So take whatever cheap tactic you need to use in order to win. And for that, and for me, that is hiding behind a very big shield and running.
That's pretty much how you played it when I watched you. So yeah, that checks out. And naturally, Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, which I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. Hang on, I'm gonna have to Google that.
Forbidden West?
Yes, thank you. It looks, first of all, it looks beautiful, just like the first one looked beautiful when it came out, and in my mind still looks beautiful. And secondly, I'm really excited because they went obviously rather political for the first one, so I'm kind of curious to see where they're going to go now. So that'll be fun, both from like a gameplay perspective and also from an analysis perspective. I just hope that they port it properly to the PC, because I had to wait a little while for some patches before it worked very well on the PC. So I don't know if I'll buy it right away, but I'm excited and I hope it works out well.
Is it releasing on the PC right away? I feel like I remember the original being like a PlayStation exclusive or something. It took a while to get to the PC.
Yeah, I thought this one was, hang on, I should Google that. I thought this one was coming out for others too. I'm going to Google that.
I'm looking forward to that game either way as well. I feel like the storytelling in the first game, I really liked all the I don't even know the terminology from the original game, but when you went down into the kind of the old labs, or the old like kind of pre-apocalyptic spaces, and kind of found out the story of how the world ended, I really liked a lot of that in the first game.
Yeah, 100%. That was my favorite part, was exploring the ruins. Also, you were right, it is coming out for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but luckily I have a PS4, so I can still check it out. Yeah, I'm very excited. It looks like it's also taking place in like Western US, which is going to be a nice change of pace in terms of the environment, because it'll be like, well, there were like desert areas, which you could assume was probably different parts of like Nevada, but the U.S. has a few other desert parts in the first one anyway, but it also seemed to span like a much bigger sort of landscape, and this is focusing like California, Nevada, and Utah. So that'll be like a very different and very specific landscape that I'm excited to explore.
What about, do we have any like non-game media picks we want to shout out in our remaining time?
What do you mean by non-game media picks?
I don't know, just stuff this year that hit that wasn't a game.
The games were so bad this year, we have to go outside games on a game podcast. Okay.
I have lots more games I could definitely talk about, but as far as like big games adjacent media, I mean, like there was a pretty big year for like video game adaptation TV shows between Arcane and The Witcher, are both two pretty big. I think we're both two pretty big hits. I know I definitely enjoyed them, and I saw people talking about them a lot on social media.
Arcane was wild because it like I really enjoyed it, and it was like maybe one of the most beautifully animated things I've ever seen in my entire life. And also also it was an ad.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't like an ad or like a transmedia property or however you want to qualify it. It did its job. Like I'd only played maybe about a collective 2 hours of League of Legends before watching Arcane, but it really made me want to I want to play something in the League of Legends universe now. So it worked, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about it in relation to Riot, just like what the connection is, because it's not like Riot actually made it; they just funded it. Like it's made by a studio separate from Riot, and like kind of I don't know. It's really a kind of interesting thing to come out and think about.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I'm sort of joking about it, but again, I think it was like, especially for what it was, which was like this sort of multimedia product tie-in, like astonishingly well produced and like really like just like stellar writing, really good voice acting. I already said the animation, like a pretty impressive thing to watch.
It is kind of like upsetting though that we are looking at things outside of games right now, because 2021 was not a good year for games, which sucks because Biomutant came out this year, and I was really hyped for that, and I never got a chance to play it because I ended up seeing a lot of people tearing it apart online, which was really depressing. I don't know if anybody else got a chance to play.
So I didn't play Biomutant, but that's an open question for me, is was this a bad year for games, or was it just a bad year during which a lot of games came out? Because like Metroid Dread came out, and that game is incredible. It wasn't my game of the year because I don't have much of an attachment to Metroid, so it didn't hit me like it did for some people. But like from a design level, like mwah, that game. And then I don't know, like again, there was Psychonauts 2, which was not a small deal. Monster Hunter Rise came out. That was this year. That game is really good. So I don't know if games had a bad year, especially in the indie space. I didn't really dig into that deep, but there were a bunch of good releases this year. And so I don't know if games had a bad year or if we all had a bad year and it makes it harder to enjoy them.
You know what? That probably checks out a lot more. Based on what we all know about our lives, that was probably more the case. Because you're right, I didn't even get a chance to check out Biomutant that I was so hyped for. I didn't get a chance to play Metroid. Not that I grew up with the Metroid games, but my partner did, and a bunch of my friends did, so it was naturally something I should have checked out. Never ended up getting a chance to do it because this year just sucked.
I think I don't know. I definitely liked a lot of the games that came out this year, but I am also one who plays a lot of smaller like independent games, and I think looking at a lot of other like publications games of the year list, I think that maybe the delaying of some of the bigger like blockbuster AAA titles into 2022 made a lot more space or like for audiences and for critics to be looking like at smaller releases. Like I like like Unpacking is getting like an enormous amount of attention for what that game is, for how like kind of this, like I'm not saying it a diminutive way, but it's a relatively small game, but it's on a lot of people's top 10 of the list. And games like Mondon, like all these, there's a lot of games by incredibly small teams or even just solo developers that are getting a lot more critical attention than I think they might have in previous years. But yeah, it's just you're seeing like kind of the delay or like the ramifications of the pandemic on game development production. Like a lot of the bigger games got pushed back or delayed or what have you. Like Horizon was from what I remember, was supposed to come out in 21. And a game I'm excited about for next year was Total War 3 Total War Warhammer 3. That was another big delay. I think Elden Ring. I can't remember if Elden Ring was originally a 2021, but like it's just kind of like a shifting of the pieces, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but I think there was a lot of really interesting games that came out this year, and it's just maybe they finding the time to search them out, or I guess if maybe they're not everyone's particular flavor or whatever.
I mean, Andrew, you mentioned you had a lot more picks, so maybe as like the least disillusioned person in this call right now, you could you could name a few more.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Look at my list here. I don't know if I have a lot of like interesting things to say about it, but I loved Resident Evil 8. I thought it was just like like a blast from start to finish. And I also have a little bit of a bias. Maybe like it was the first game that I played on. My partner was able to get a PS5 for me as a very generous birthday present, and that was the first PS5 game I played. So I was kind of being wowed a little bit by like graphics. But it's a really fun game. If anyone's played Resident Evil 4, it kind of has that same like a little bit of arcadey sensibility to it. Like it's just feels very fun to play, and it's not overtly scary like some of the other like Resident Evil 7 is, or some other first person horror games. I don't know, that one was just fun, but like yeah, it's not like there's not anything especially interesting I could say about it. I feel like maybe one of the funnier elements outside of it or around it was all the Twitter fun and social media fun around Lady Dimitrescu, the tall vampire woman who was quite popular online in the first part of the year. I don't know, it's just a fun game. Similarly, I played Deathloop, but that's another one that I just liked, and it's not something that I think it does what it was trying to do very well, but not something that is revolutionary or is really changing up the immersive sim genre or anything. But I liked it a lot. I thought it was very fun.
I mean, that just reminded me. I think for me, my favorite game I played this year that was neither, steeped in nostalgia nor a Souls-like game was not Deathloop, but the very similar The Forgotten City, which you can play in like under 10 hours and is an absolute head trip, and again has just enough jank to be like kind of clumsy and adorable. And is made by like I think 3 people. I don't know, truly impressive feat for what that game is, and just like a darling little piece of writing. I really loved it.
I really want to play that one. I keep on seeing a lot of games critics and YouTubers and stuff and video essays talking very highly about that game. And I remember seeing it when it first came out, and you saying it like it's janky a little bit. It reminds me because it's built off of like it's built off of as a kind of a Skyrim mod, right? Like it looks older than it is, or it kind of feels older than it is in the way that it presents itself.
So the story is even better than that, which is that it was originally released as a Skyrim mod, and originally released like themed within the like Elder Scrolls lore. So like I'm pretty sure it had like dark elves and whatever. And then they were like, oh no, we're gonna like sell this. But then they had to scrub it of all the Elder Scrolls baggage, and they couldn't use the Elder Scrolls engine. So they wrote, as far as I can tell, they basically recreated the Skyrim engine in, I believe it was Unreal or Quake. I think it was Unreal. Anyway, they like basically rebuilt the Skyrim engine from scratch and then reskinned all the elves and dwarves as Romans and Greeks, which again, it's just so delightful because it does play like Skyrim, but I find it, one of the things that's even more makes it even more charming is the fact that they had to reverse engineer Skyrim so that it would feel like Skyrim.
That's funny. There's kind of like a double like time loop aspect to it. Like there's the narrative aspect, but then it's like in real time. It's something that kind of has a relationship with its own history a bit. Like it's kind of calling back to itself. I have more. I could go down my list more. I don't know. I don't want to be the only one talking, but if we were to, but
One thing I did want to bring up and this was only fairly recent, was in terms of board games, just to give us some variation. The Princess Bride board game, I only just saw it come out like this Christmas, so I don't know if it's been out for a while. But that is the coolest cooperative board game I've ever seen. You can only play a maximum of 4 players, but you basically play each chapter. So I don't know how much you guys remember Princess Bride, or if you've seen it growing up. That was like my favorite movie growing up. So like it starts off chapter 1, you're at the farm, and it's just like Buttercup and Wesley, and you've got to like make them do chores and stuff like that, and then like go to like To Fortune, and then you have the next page where you're like trying to sail the ship. You've got Fezzik and Inigo and Vizzini on the ship with Buttercup trying to like sail away from the mystery ship. It's amazing, and it's so fun. And the best part is, like, you know how if you ever play Risk, where you've got to like leave the board there set up and then walk away from it and come back? We don't actually have to do that this way because it's all done by chapters. You can literally, like my family and I played it, and we just stopped at chapter 3 because, we didn't understand the rules first, so we wasted an hour figuring that out. It was just really fun. I highly recommend that one.
There's this really interesting current in like analog gaming right now. The Princess Bride board game, it's a bit of a role-playing game, right? Like there's a book you play out of.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a book that you play out of, but it's less role-playing because you don't assume the role of any character. You're all trying to move all of the characters collectively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I gotcha. But there's this growing trend, which I'm finding super interesting. And I'm seeing that this came out in 2020, so it's very much sort of in line in terms of timing, of like making these sort of more focused role-play-y like analog game experiences. Like another one that came out recently was they did one for Labyrinth, like the movie with David Bowie, which is apparently very good. I haven't played it, but apparently it's great. And they did one with The Green Knight, which apparently wasn't as good. Although having watched that movie, I don't really see where the game is there. Anyway, and then there's another. Oh, it's gonna drive me nuts. There's another one coming out soon for something. It might be Dune or something. I'll have to check.
I think I saw that Green Knight one that you were talking about. That one seemed a little bit more of just like a promotional, like A24 has like a lot of almost like art objecty things they try to produce alongside their movies, and that one looked like more for like the money they dumped into the printing to make it look like just like an old school like tabletop role playing book or like module or something. But I don't know. It looked cool. I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe isn't the most fun to play though.
I mean, in that case, give me a board game of The Witch.
Oh, that would be good. Or The Lighthouse.
Ooh!
On the topic of board games, it's kind of like veering it back into video games a little bit, but something over the course of the pandemic that I've really found to be super interesting, or I'm obviously it's not new, but things like Tabletop Simulator, and then like in browser kind of similar versions. There's one called Tabletopia or Tabletopia, where it's you can just get a bunch of people to play like a 3D rendered version of a board game in a browser, or in Tabletop Simulator's case, like in a program. But I've been having a lot of fun throughout the course of the pandemic doing, as like when lockdown is more in strict effect, being able to still play board games with people remotely. I don't know if anybody's had experiences with any of those or either of those.
I forced my friends to play Gloomhaven with me on Tabletop Simulator, but Gloomhaven is already really complicated without having to figure out how to manipulate the bits in a game engine, so it didn't work great.
That's one that I always have to. I have the physical version of that, and I always have to like really try and convince my partner to play with me, just because of all the setup and the takedown and everything.
See, yeah, we have the same issue where we love to play it, but like the setup takes forever, and we can't leave it set up if we're not playing because of the cats.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, then with that, would everyone like to reintroduce themselves and maybe tell us where we can find you?
Sorry, excuse me. My voice is coming and going today. but my name is Aldiana. I'm the book reviews and interviews editor. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is at Aldiana Hal. It's ALDIJANAHAL. I don't tweet anything interesting, but if you want to see photos of my cat Murphy, then definitely follow.
I'm Alex Chalk. I'm still the editor for commentaries. You can find me on Twitter at Alex_I_Chalk. And just like last time, my Twitter is still mostly me tweeting about strikes.
My name's Andrew Bailey. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew_R_Bailey. Yeah, I mostly just retweet other people's game studies articles and like calls for papers and stuff. So if you like games academia, then I guess follow me.
My name is Giuseppe Femia. I am the podcast producer, and you can find me on Twitter at _Foolsbait.
And I'm Sabrina Scandura. You can find me. Oh, I'm one of the EICs this year, and you can find me on Twitter at Sabrina Alicia ALICIA SG, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/BrainiacBree. And also, just a quick plug, I'll be picking up my streaming again on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So catch a girl on this Wednesday starting off 4:30 p.m.
Thanks for listening to the First Person Podcast. You can find us at FPS Weekly or start a conversation using the hashtag First Person Podcast on Twitter. First Person Podcast is produced by Giuseppe Femia with support from the Games Institute at the University of Waterloo.